You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. By going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, you can make this possible. All right, folks, there's a new documentary airing on MTV in the future that looks at the life of Bruce Franks. Now, he was a prominent activist who was elected to the Missouri House of Representatives in 2016. And he won re-election in 2018. Well, this summer, he announced that he would be resigning from the legislature to focus on his mental health and family, and more recently said he'll be moving away from St. Louis. Here's a clip from that documentary.
I gotta let you watch the old school Ghostbusters, the one that came out when I was your age.
Oh, well, I watched the old Ninja Turtles when I was your age.
When you was my age?
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds interesting.
When you were a baby.
Okay. You know what song I heard today?
Huh?
That I ain't heard in a long time?
What?
We ready.
We ready.
We ready for y'all.
You sung it when I was 5.
You ain't 5 though. You ain't 5 to what day?
August.
August what?
9th.
August 9th. You're gonna learn about August 9th real soon. Something else happened on August 9th when you was born.
What happened?
I'll tell you when you 5.
On August 9th.
On August 9th.
On August the 9th, 18-year-old Michael Brown was gunned down by a white police officer in Ferguson, Missouri.
Ferguson has been in turmoil after a white police officer shot dead an unarmed black teenager.
If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, we do this for Mike Brown. Turn up,
there's not really a conscious political voice in battle rap. It's a way to reach people.
It is, man. I'm about to make a political move in my city. I'm about to run for state representative.
Remember, I'm the one that went from being pepper sprayed and tear gas to being sworn in.
If everybody look to their left, you gonna walk right into gun violence.
On my day. Senator.
I do that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
Congratulations.
All right, Bruce Franks joins us right now. How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing good.
So, you get elected. Folks are excited. They're talking about your youth. They're talking about someone from who's an activist now going to the public space. But when was that point where you said, I can't stay here?
It started in 2018, right around August 19th, 20th. My best friend was killed. I've been through a lot of gun violence, but that was, like, he was the closest person to me. When he was killed, as well as other things that I was going through in life, in November, my godson was killed at 16 due to gun violence. And just the weight of being a representative, you know, in a black poor community, right? And having that weight on your shoulders. It's like everybody hypes you up to run and they want you to run and they're excited when you win, but nobody tells you about a lot of these other things, you know, the mental strain and a lot of the stuff you're gonna go through. And so I had got to the point where I fought through it, starting to recognize like my mental health, depression, anxiety I was going through. And, you know, to be quite honest, even in December of 2018, suicide. And fought through that and decided to go back when session started in January. And when I started back, when I got there, I was like, you know what, I don't even want to be here.
Did you have any of that prior to running? Or did it really come about after you got elected? And was it that you were not fully understanding of all that it went into? Because the reality is, when you get elected to office, it's not a 5-day-a-week job.
No.
It's 7 days a week.
Yeah, 24 hours a day. If you truly doing the right thing and you're there for the people. But you're right. I've been going through this for 26 years. I just didn't know. My brother was killed in 1991. When I was 6 years old, he was 9. And so going through this string of funerals and gun violence and being from this community and these things that you are taught that are normal, but it took me till I was 34, 33 to realize that everything I went through for the last 20-some years ain't normal. You know, so I was able to now identify that, oh, this is anxiety, this is depression, this is suicidal thoughts, this is PTSD, you know.
Well, the reason it's interesting you say that, Jason Kander, of course, who was Secretary of State in Missouri, almost upset Roy Blount, was running for mayor of Kansas City and dropped out. And he announced it was because of PTSD. He served in Afghanistan with he was an Army intelligence officer. And people were even shocked by that. But he said, no, I got to step out because he was still dealing with the PTSD of what he experienced in Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
You said he's a friend of yours?
So Jason,
y'all discussed this?
Yeah, so Jason is a person who, Jason and Stephen Weber and I, who was the kind of leader of the Democratic Party for a couple years before he stepped down, we would have these conversations. And Jason Kander is one who's always kind of been open about PTSD, and he was really open at this point where he's talking about stepping back. So he's one of the people that I actually talked to. But, you know, he came from a different aspect of it. You know, you've been to war. So we have a lot of veterans that deal with PTSD. So it don't matter if you're a veteran dealing with PTSD that come from a war, or you're a black kid from a community fighting a war you didn't sign up for.
And that's the thing that I don't think people truly understand. I spent 6 years in Chicago. And when you have conversations, it's always a trip being here. And I've been at the White House at the table with Trump, and people bring up Chicago, and people always want to throw Chicago up. But I got to walk people through, because I tell them all the time, I said, look, I was born and raised in Houston. And I'm trying to think it may have been maybe when I was in high school, I first experienced a classmate dying. Then when I was in college, that was a guy who was our church and our youth group, shot in the head, who was killed. You're not dealing with folks who've experienced 10, 15, 20 deaths before they got to high school. And we're talking about, they should be able to go to school, be able to learn. And you're sitting here 12 and 13 and 14 years old, and to your point, you've gone through all of these funerals, and to act as if I can just go to school as a regular thing? No, it's not.
Yeah, especially when it comes to the black community, because it's such a stigma on depression and anxiety.
Yes.
And, you know, I've heard before where parents told their kids, you can't be depressed. You're too young to be depressed. My brother died when I was 6 years old. My godfather died 8 months later. My uncle died 8 months later. At this point in my life, I've been over 200 funerals. Most of those resulting in gun violence. Most of those being periods. You know, I had
200?
Yes, 200. Between 2015 and 2015 and 16, I had lost almost 24 kids that I mentored in the St. Louis area. And that's within a 12 to 18 month span. I've been in rooms and I've talked to a room full of white folks that haven't been to 15 funerals in their whole life, and they 60, 70 years old. And so to think that this is such a, you know, this is just such far-fetched to believe that our young people today are going through anxiety and depression, and, you know, it's real. And we got to get real about the conversation, because far too long we've said, oh, just be strong. Oh, just keep going. Oh, just keep moving. And I just felt like I've been a strong person this time because my grandma was strong, my mama was strong, you know, everybody was strong. And now I understand that, it's time to get some help.
Sure.
Derek.
Mental health in the black community. I wrote an op-ed in the Huffington Post. It's time to start talking about mental health in the black community, because like he said, it's been so taboo. And for black men, we've been told, you can't cry, you be tough, you know, just pray about it.
That's
and so, just pray about it. And that's what we've been taught. Meanwhile, our counterparts, white people, they go get help for their mental health issues.
But this is where, and Bruce, I want you to come in here, but this is the thing, though, that, and you're right, this is what we also have to understand. I keep making the point that this discussion about gun deaths goes back to economics. this discussion about mental health goes back to economics.
Sure does.
The reality is, if you're white and you got insurance,
there you go. They go get help.
Yes, you can get help. But the reality is, we had to go to the pastor because that's all we had. And so part of this thing is when we're discussing, like every time these people want to talk about Chicago, I said, if you do not want to talk about the economics of Chicago or St. Louis or Ferguson or New Orleans, then you don't want to talk about gun control. Go ahead.
If we can't condemn these things unless we condemn the environment that brings it, right? Yeah. So if you talk about gun violence, right? What's the root cause of gun violence? Nobody in the hood, I can't speak for nowhere else, but ain't nobody in the hood just picking up a gun because they want to pick up a gun, right? They suffering from something, lack of jobs, education, undiagnosed mental health issues in the black community.
Absolutely.
And not to make light of anything that's happened, because my heart goes out to every single mass shooting that's ever happened. But when a white person goes and shoots up something, the first thing they revert to is, oh, well, he suffers from this. Well, how do we even know that he suffers from that?
Because and they bring in massive resources for mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely, but that's where we missing it. In our communities, we don't have mental health resources, right? But even if we get the resources, we got to have a real conversation that lets us know that it's okay to go take part in it.
Sure. You know, I want to commend you because for coming out and talking about mental health issues, and I hope to see the rest of your film and that you continue a crusade to raise awareness about mental health in the black community, because there is an absolute stigma against seeking help. There's an absolute stigma against getting medication, but these things can help. When people have mental health problems, some of them are chemical. Yeah. They're not necessarily, trauma-induced, but they're chemical. Trauma induction is also another area. But we really, I want to lift up Terry Williams, who wrote a book about black folks and depression. And she wrote it about 10 years ago. It was a really good book when she talked about how we just are in denial. And go talk to your pastor. Roland, you're right, there may not be any other resources, but on the other hand, if your pastor is not a licensed counselor and cannot prescribe meds, he ain't gonna do anything for you but hold your hand and say a prayer, which is not ineffective, but it's not a solution.
But it's also owning up to, again, the people who are trying to make a difference, and then what happens when services get cut. You talked about the state representative. Go to my iPad. This is a story here of Dr. Carl Bell. I knew him quite well in Chicago. Carl died in August, 71 years old. He was all about mental health, and he had his own, first of all, finished from Meharry, served in the U.S. Navy, had his own facility, witnessed the violence, was in gangs growing up, and then dealt with this whole issue. But what happened was he had his own center. Funding gets cut, had to shut it down. He came up with various programs in Chicago public school system, trying to teach people how to deal with conflict resolution. But the reality is, in this country, what cities and counties did is that they slash anything dealing with mental health. We used to have community health centers, okay? Then when cities and counties and states shut those down, it's kind of like, well, y'all sort of figure it out. And so you got people who are walking around where you used to be able to have a facility to go to. And they don't. So as somebody who experienced this, but you were also elected official, what has been the response? What have been those conversations like when you're trying to explain to elected officials why they must fund clinics and health centers? And then do you get pushback, or do they say, yeah, I hear you, that sounds great, but then they'll sit here and then go fund something else?
They'll go fund something else. Because reality is, when it's not happening in your community and you're the majority, you control where everything goes, right? It's cool that we have mental health awareness days. Those are important, right? To uplift, to bring, to bring education to it. But if we're not funding the places that are most affected when we talk about mental health issues, then what are we doing? And that's another part of being in a legislature, where it's like, all right, I'm going back home. When I get home, I hear a gunshot. I live in the hood. I used to live in the hood in St. Louis, right? I hear a gunshot. I ain't your regular elected official. I'm running over there because I know this is probably one of these kids that I done mentored, that I talk to every day. So I'm over here compressing the womb and waiting till the ambulance get there, right? Talking to the entire community Like, all right, well, what needs to happen? All right, we need better education. We need more programs. We need this over. We need to fund summer jobs. Cool. So I leave and go to Jefferson City, which is our capital, right? I serve all week, and I'm up here fighting. Highly Republican state, highly outnumbered, super minority top to bottom, trying to get stuff done. But on the same hand, in my head, what's still playing is I just had to hold this kid warm. I just had to talk to his mama. Then when I come back, my brother dies, right? My best friend, my kids that I mentor, my nephews, and it's an everyday process. So I'm speaking to them from a lived experience. Like, look, this one I'm not telling y'all no stories. It's not a myth. This is what I'm going through every day. And even when you talking to them, and even if it feels like they may get it in the room a lot of the times, their ability to move forward on action about it is just not there because they're not necessarily forced to. Until the numbers change and it's closer in proximity.
Until
where
white kids start getting shot in huge numbers, then that's when something will change.
And that's one of the realest things I heard in a long time, because at the end of the day, I fight for everybody. But I fight for those who look like me first. And when you talk about this issue of gun violence, which ties right into mental health issues and undiagnosed mental health issues, I hear so much talk about banning these guns. I hear so much talk about these other mass shootings that's happened, and those are atrocities, they're tragedies, absolutely. But when you highlight those and you forget about the black folks and the black communities that go through gun violence each and every day, you're taking away our voices. You're taking away our need for mental health resources. Because when you parade him to the front, when y'all take him out of here safe as can be, even though he done killed all these people, the first thing you're gonna say is, you know what? Well, he got bullied. He suffered from anxiety. He suffered from depression. And that's not okay.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Mustafa.
And we don't know if they had a mental problem.
Mustafa.
First, I just want to, I wish I could get up and this mic wasn't on just to give you a hug, because I know how important self-care is. I just came back from St. Louis last night, and while I was there, I slid over to Ferguson for a second. I had conversations, and it reminded me of the work that I did in Southeast Washington, where some of the young brothers who we were running through programs, they was getting their lives together. They'd be standing on their porch and just catch a cab. And you're like, all this is just put on everybody. And the thing is, there's a numbness that comes through that situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're just like, okay, so I just got to be hard all the time.
Yeah.
I can't tell anybody about what's going on, and it just starts to eat away at you. And then that's why we have all these diseases that continue to pop up, hypertension, heart disease, all these things they want to put on top of us and say it's our diet. If you're living in a war zone all the time, you don't never get a chance to breathe.
Yeah.
So I applaud you for the self-care and for you taking a step back and reevaluating how do we best address these issues.
Absolutely.
And how do we make sure that we're educating people about our vote and using our vote to actually get the right people in office. And also, and that last thing you said, brother, was so incredibly important. I also work for everybody, but it is our communities that continue to be the ones who are unseen and unheard and forgotten and never get the resources that are necessary to make the change. So I just give the utmost respect to you for what you have done.
Appreciate you, brother.
John Hope Bryant, Operation Hope. He says this all the time. He says that you will never see a riot in the neighborhood with a credit score 700 or higher.
Period.
That's a word.
Period.
Yeah.
And so I think, and again, I'm gonna go back to the money piece. I think every time when people want to yell Chicago, I think our response has to be, where are the jobs? Where's the home ownership? Because again, I think about where I grew up, Clinton Park in Houston. I can remember standing on the portion of our street. Look, we had two-parent households with older black folks who took care of their yards, everything like that. But I could stand on the porch and remember seeing the FBI and the Houston Police Department taking down a crack house. I saw those things. But also the difference is, in my house, you had mom and dad with a job. brother that lived across the street, Mr. Jordan, he was working. Folks next door work. Folks do not want to deal with the economic calamity that is existing in these places. Mm-hmm. And to your point, yes, when you see a young girl in Atlanta who's sleeping and a bullet comes through the house and kills her while she's in bed. When you think about, again, when you're seeing these young black folks at Clark Atlanta, opening of school as a shooting, luckily no one was killed, but again, you're like, I'm not trying to send my kid to school. And that's leaving places going to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. You said you're leaving. How tough is that? A place that's home for you. Most of us want to go back home.
So I'm gonna be all the way real with you, Roland. It was a little easier than I thought it was gonna be. The hardest thing is family.
Right.
Right. Family. My district. I fought so hard to get that seat. We fought hard. But knowing that the district is in good hands, knowing that it ain't amount of miles in the world that's gonna take me from my kids and my family, and understanding that I'm important, I'm needed, I'm necessary, and whatever I need to do to make sure that I'm okay and my self-care is at 100%, then that's what I need to do. So when I made the decision to actually leave, it was a little easier than I thought it was gonna be, but it's been one of the best decisions that I've made.
I got black folks who I know who have said they're not going back to Chicago. Matter of fact, Chicago had the second highest concentration of African Americans outside of New York. Yeah. New York is 3.5. Chicago used to be around 1.3, 1.4 million. It's going to approach 800,000. Folks are leaving because there are people like and to your point about going home. I know some black professionals who say, I don't want to go home because I don't want to get caught in the crossfire. I don't even want to be in the city.
Right.
And something happens and I'm just visiting.
So the thing so this the thing with me though. I'm not worried about the crossfire. Like if I come back and I'm doing the work and I get caught in the crossfire, then that's just what was meant for me. I'm okay with that. It's just being able to come back at 100% and actually do the work, right? Like I don't mind, because everywhere I go to the hood, right? Because that's what we needed. I don't care what state, every state got a hood somewhere. So that's where you're gonna find me. But as far as going back because of, not being caught in the crossfire, not being caught in this, like, no, that's what I signed up for the moment I started to speak the truth and stand on what I believe in. But I need to make sure that I'm at 100% while fighting. See, St. Louis ain't never seen me at 100%. They see me at 50, they see me at 60 in office, they see me at 70, head gone, now I'm at 50. But now I can come back, right? Do what I need to do, leave, and come back whenever I need to. And it's gotten to the point where I realized where my place in this fight is. Yeah, it was one of the dopest things on earth was getting elected. Especially this kid from 4300 Gibson with tattoos on his face that rap, that they thought couldn't do it, right? But I got in that office, I fought, I passed legislation, put millions into the budget, something that a lot of folks didn't do. But I realized politics is for patient people who understand that it's gonna take a while to change this system. I speak up and speak out. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X didn't make it to 40.
Right.
I got activists that stood right next to me in Ferguson that didn't make it to 35. So if that's what our tale is, if that's what our life expectancy is, I need change to happen a little faster. And the way it's gonna happen faster is if I force it from the outside while working with those patient people from the inside.
I'm glad you made that point because I tell people all the time, stay in your lane. And, since I was 25, every city I've lived in, I've been approached to run for office. Every single city. People go on my Facebook page, Twitter, Roland, run for president. We need to run for. I'm like, no. So that ain't what I'm there for. I said, I'm doing exactly what God designed for me.
Absolutely.
This is what I've done. I'll be 51 in November. I've done this since 14. No desire to do anything else. None. I said, this is what I'm designed to do. And I try to explain to people all the time that everybody's not, people want Michelle Obama to run. Michelle Obama has said, I don't want no part of that. Because it takes a certain type of person to be a politician. everybody can't be an activist. Everybody can't be the one leading the news conference. Somebody got to be the one who you don't even know anything about. Now, I think for a lot of people is understanding that, and that is critically important. But I got to ask you this here, because you mentioned the activists. And we saw this with the folks who went through Ferguson. We saw this with Black Lives Matter activists all across the country. And I tell people all the time, well, you got to study history. So many of them did not realize the mental health part of all of this, and the strain and the pressure. And it hit them where the work was every single day. And I tell folks all the time, I said, y'all, when King died, his heart, the autopsy said it was almost that of a man who was 70, because the strain and the pressure. And he went through depression. Major bouts. When they had the march in Memphis, where the young brothers behind at the end of the march started busting up the windows, when they grabbed King and took him to Holiday Inn, he literally got under the covers, fully clothed, shaken, and immediately went into a depressive state. That was Dr. King. And a lot of these activists have been going through this, not realizing, man, this is real.
2017, we was protesting the Stockley verdict. I did an interview with you.
That was the police officer in St. Louis.
I did an interview with you over Skype. Left out, went and led it was about 2,000 people march with Anthony Lamar Smith's mother, you know, a bunch of people in front of the police station. And I'm yelling and I'm passionate. We get to the top, right at the top of the hill where the police station is, and I just pass out. And I had to get water, and they had to get me. And it got to the point where I was realizing, at one point I was out there with pneumonia. And I'm thinking, you know, I got a severe cold, but if I ain't out here, or, you know, if I organize this, or we helped organize this, or if I'm not out here. And then I look back over some of my brothers and sisters who didn't make it out, more brothers who didn't make it out past the fight. It's like you hear a lot of conspiracy theories. You hear that, oh, well, they was out here, so, you know, this happened. And
the guys who got shot, cars on fire, these different activists.
And not to take nothing away from, because we know, and I'm going to keep it real, we know how that happens, right? We know that's happened. We know that's real. It's happened over history.
Them being targeted.
Yeah, us being targeted, period.
Right.
But to not delve in and really find out what's going on takes away from the mental health strain and the actual fight internally that we may be going through, you know, depending on the situation. And you hit it right on the head when it comes to us as activists, and I could just speak for those who I got pepper spray, tear gas with. That was a full-time job, 14 hours a day that we wasn't getting paid for. We was out there off pure passion and a hope and a prayer, not understanding. Even when we was out there in Ferguson, after Michael Brown was killed, a lot of us didn't know what we was doing out there, but we figured it out. But unfortunately, nobody came up before and said, hey, look, self-care, take care of yourself. Hey, take your time back. And now it's like I look at a lot of things that we've been through, and then those who ain't here, and I realize, you know what, I am important. And in order to fight, I got to be here.
Before I go, Julian, as you were sitting there talking about that, I remembered Harry Belafonte's book, his memoir. He talked about when he sent Fannie Lou Hamer and several other activists to Africa for vacation. And that's something that people really don't understand, that you also have to have the resources to take your warriors away from the fight so they can go somewhere for a week or two and go swim in a pool and lay on the beach and enjoy the sun. Because if you need a respite in your everyday life, if you out there as an activist, I'm like, folks have no real understanding of what that life is like, which actually is even more intense than a politician.
So just imagine being a politician and an activist at the same time. I'm in office, elected, but when Stockley popped off, I was still elected. I'm organizing these protests. I'm helping organize, not by myself, but we organizing these protests. We blocking the highway. I'm getting locked up. I'm getting it from the Republicans because I'm getting locked up and I shouldn't be out here protesting. And I'm getting it from this community, and then I come back to my... you talk about a strain to go back and serve in that house and deal with folks that want to present legislation to make protesting on the highway a felony simply because they got a colleague that's doing it now. You right. I made a good choice.
Julian?
Absolutely, you did. One of the things you mentioned when you talked about you had to be on top of the hill because while you were sick because you felt no one else could do it. One of the really lessons for activists is to have rotating leadership. To make sure that the baton can be passed. I mean, to make sure that if someone isn't there, someone else is there to pick it up. And what we've often had is ego-centered leadership in the black community that requires somebody to say, I've just got to be there all the time. The folks who don't give the props to the people who are propping them up. Because as Roland says, everybody should not be a leader. Some people don't want to be leaders. But those who are leaders need to understand compassion. Now, the other thing, Roland, I want to mention quickly, the economics is at the bottom of this. Income numbers came out beginning of September. Average white family, $67,000 a year income. Average black family, about 40. Black folks don't take vacations. They take staycations.
Right.
I mean, whether you're, I didn't take a vacation until I was 35, even though I could have afforded it because I felt like I didn't deserve it because my mama didn't take vacations. So I felt like, what do you mean take a vacation?
Right.
And so we need to, that self-care thing needs to be hardwired into our community. And you don't have to go to Africa or to Hawaii. You go to Rehoboth, someplace that's within driving distance.
Chesapeake Beach.
Huh?
Chesapeake Beach.
Wherever. But I'm just saying, I really want to push the notion of leadership posses. It's one of the things that I liked about the Black Lives Matter young people, is that they really had a leadership collective. It wasn't just one person. Is that now? And my understanding is minimal, so I may be wrong, but that was the perception I got. Is that they passed the leadership around, so you didn't have one person who they took pot shots at. Because the other thing is, people took pot shots at you. Those Republicans took pot shots at you because they could.
The only thing I would say that with passing around though, you still got to have a hierarchy, because one of the problems of that leadership, and it's not just a black thing. It happened when we had all those massive Latino marches, the May Day marches. Is that they had massive mobilization, but then you had no entity that was then say, okay, how do we now harness this thing and then take this thing and then be able to move this thing forward?
Because that's how we were. Like we had leaders. Like all of us were leaders, right? But I was in the forefront because I was the elected official. I was the one that was talking to the news, and I told them, let me take the death threats. And everybody got them. A lot of folks got death threats. No matter who you were in the movement, but they calling my office, right? They sending me emails, so we can track that. We can make sure I'm cool. So let me take the brunt of that. So even if something happened to me, this still keep going.
Right.
And like you said, a lot of movements get centered as far as ego, and then you take out the leader, then you don't have a movement anymore. Yeah. We learned from that, and we made sure that everybody was a leader. You might not saw this person, that person, or that person in the front lines or even in the camera. But just know, when I got locked up on the highway with them 144 people for shutting down 40, the movement kept going. We kept organizing.
But y'all had hierarchy and a plan.
Oh, absolutely.
Y'all went through all of that.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I knew some of the groups that didn't, and so stuff was in sort of disarray. Occupation Wall Street was the same thing. They were like, no, we got no leader. I'm going, and you have no focus. It's all over the place. I got to ask you this here. So when you, what was it like that? So what was like that moment for you when you got away, when you got away from St. Louis and you stepped away? Did you go, damn, I don't know what this even feels like?
So I said something I made a Facebook post, and it's gonna tie into everything. But I made a Facebook post, and I said, you never know how racist the place you live is until you go live somewhere else. You don't understand how toxic it is until you go live somewhere else. I was realizing that where I live now, I've been there for 2 months. I probably heard sirens twice.
Where are you now?
He don't tell me, and he should.
No, that's that.
Oh, he can't tell?
That's why I didn't ask.
Oh, gotcha.
I've heard
You think I went this long time and I thought about that question, Derek?
My bad, Roland. This your show.
Figure out some stuff without having to say it.
Hey, you see, I gave him that look.
Right.
You sure did.
That's why I was like, and I gave him a look too, like.
Well, I didn't see your look. I saw his.
Right.
I was about to pat him down.
Right.
I didn't give him a look. I just swiveled.
What the hell? Go ahead.
Really?
But I realized that I only heard sirens twice. St. Louis, man, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. I left my door open the other day on accident and came home and was like, hold on, they got the searching around and making sure. I realized, you know what, everywhere it just ain't the same. And I love my city. I love my city. I'll fight, I'll die for them. But I will die while I'm fighting, right? Not in this sense of while I'm fighting myself, while I'm fighting these inner demons. And so now being able to work out, being able to be healthy, being able to just drive to wherever it is I like to drive to that's only 3 or 4 hours away, right? To get away, scenery, and just all these different things. Like when I was in office back in February, I weighed 130 pounds soaking wet with ankle weights on. And now I've been working out, I've been feeling good. I weigh 170. This is the most I ever weighed. It's the healthiest I ever been. I battle rap. And I looked at my performance from my last battle where I'm in this new space and I'm jumping across stage like I'm 18 again. You know, I'm 35. That ain't old, but for me, that's
right. That's double what you used to be.
Yeah, I'm getting there, you know? And so I'm looking at how I'm jumping across stage and the energy I got and realizing that not only have politics never seen me at 100% activism, but like my world, like even talking to my kids like, oh, Daddy, you look good. It's realizing my kids ain't even seen me at 100%.
You're free.
Free.
Documentary airs when?
So we don't have a specific date, but it's late fall, and so it'll be on MTV. It's in all these film festivals going around, and you know, it's a lot going on, so it'll definitely be highly publicized when it does drop.
Well, we're certainly glad you were here sharing your story.
Absolutely, I appreciate
hopefully, there's somebody who's watching, whether or not they're activists or not, will understand the importance of self-care, taking care of themselves, and not being sort of bound by all of that pressure. And definitely the activists out there. And I also hope people have a better understanding and appreciation of what activists go through.
Yeah.
Because again, and those are the folks who haven't read, don't realize, again, the number of times MLK was hospitalized, the number of times Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. has been hospitalized because of dehydration, because, I mean, how they've just worked themselves to exhaustion. And it's real. It's real. And I think for a lot of people, we're very critical of activists. We are demanding of things, what they should and should be doing, what they should not be doing, saying what they should be making this amount of money, shouldn't be doing this and doing that. Not realizing that even just a getaway to go to an awards show is actually a vacation for some of them. I think a lot of people have no understanding of that.
Real. That's real.
We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
No, thank y'all for having me.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. You've heard me talk a lot about marijuanastock.org. Why? Because I want to keep you informed of investment opportunities that make sense. We've all watched the growth of the cannabis industry, now at more than $340 billion worldwide. And of course, we're seeing an increasing number of states in the U.S. actually make marijuana illegal. Of course, the cousin of the marijuana is the hemp plant with a much higher concentration of CBD, which means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Until recently, hemp farming was practically illegal in the U.S., but the 2018 Farm Bill changed all of that, now making it legal. What does that mean? That means folks need land. And this is a credible investment opportunity. That's why 420 Real Estate is moving forward. Their business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords. You can get in on the action. What they've done for the viewers of Roland Martin Unfiltered, they allow you to make a minimal investment of $200. Initially it was $500, now it's $200 in this crowdfunding campaign that you can give from $200 up to $10,000. Again, this is a $340 billion industry that is still growing. You can participate with as little as $200. To invest, go to marijuanastock.org, marijuanastock.org. And that's, again, marijuanastock.org. reelection.org to get in the game and get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.